Well, thank you for coming this afternoon. As you will have picked up through the newsletter and other bits of information that have been going out, Schofield's Flying Club Limited has gone into a business arrangement with Sky Australia, and Barbara Lamond is here today representing Sky Australia. And basically what they do is organise tours, so that they're very much focused on the overseas market, so that people can come to Australia, pilots come to Australia, and they can just basically hop in a plane and fly off on a great tour with everything booked for them by Sky Australia. So I'd like to welcome Barbara Lamond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll give you a bit of background. So I think partnering up with SFC now is actually really good for us because I finally found people with a bit of passion for aviation, which is something we've been looking for. So a bit of background to what Paul and I do. So we're a husband-wife duo, and we are part of a bigger planetary business that was started in South Africa in '98. We've been doing pilot tours or pilot safaris and putting them together as package deals with aircraft, accommodation, transfers, as a 2 to 4 to 6 week safari for people, mainly from Europe. So we've got a huge market from Germany, Austria. Might just get that, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, so our major market is Germany, Austria, Switzerland, UK, and a few Americans and Canadians as well. So we've been doing it, like I said, since '98. We have a 60% customer return basis at this stage, so we pretty much know what we're doing in the African side of things. We've been in Australia now for 8 years, started this business a year ago because we just felt there wasn't anything like it on offer for the Europeans, and now tying up with SFC, we'd like to offer and extend that for the local market as well. Slightly different angle in the sense that you guys don't need license validations, you don't need all sorts of things done ahead of time, you're pretty much kitted out to go and fly tomorrow if you wanted to. The idea behind it is really just to make it a little bit simpler and to put something together that you guys can do as a group. Just to give you a bit of background, so why do we actually want to do this? We feel people get pilot licenses, some go on to be airline pilots, some go on to be instructors, but most of the time the private pilot license is something you get because you have an intent of actually going to places, taking family, taking friends, etc. So we're trying to bring the fun back into flying. So, just think quickly. All right. So bringing a bit of the adventure back into it. That's really what it's all about. You've got a huge backyard called Australia that I can tell you now almost every European pilot really wants to see. And I think as Australians we're pretty much fortunate to be able to just get in a plane and do it without the jet lag and having to get over that for the first week. So doing it as a group, there's safety in numbers as well. You've got a whole bunch of people that you can do it. You can do it with 2, 3 or 4 aircraft. The tour that we planned was SFC in 2 months' time. We've sort of had to gauge what might be an acceptable length. Our usual customers are here for 2 to 4 weeks. That's a bit long. You'd have to take extended leave for that. But also to not just make it a weekend trip, we've planned it from a Saturday to a Sunday, which would mean for 9 days. To a nice time away, not too long from taking absence from work or whatever else your daily activities would be, and give you a little bit of a sense of actually going further than just the next stop. So once you land and overnight, you're not going back to where you came from, you just go on to the next adventure. So for many people, flying once every month or every 2 months or just keeping a recency up is actually something that I would classify as bordering dangerous. If you can keep your skills going on a regular basis, that's ideal. Part of that, if you do a safari or a tour of 10 to 20 hours, that kind of skill level gets improved just by doing it day in, day out for a consecutive number of days. And then the whole point is to also have a few good laughs along the way. and meet new friends, maybe have your old regular ones with you all the time. So 9 days is what we planned with the itineraries. Starting at Bankstown, planning 2 people per aircraft, so it's either a pilot and a passenger or 2 pilots. We've limited to that for performance reasons and also the other planning we've done. Some of the legs might be longer, so you might need to have a bit of reserve in the fuel tanks, etc. as well. Planned 12 airports that we'll be stopping at, some for refueling, some for overnight. Most of the southern ones are tar. You've got a few dirt strips and 1 grass in that, and total flying time will be 20 hours. So this is the Southern Skies tour, which is a shortened version of what we have done. So that's from Oz Runways there. How many of you are familiar with Oz Runways? How many? Yeah. You use any other software or? Yeah. Airplane. All right. Well, we tend to use the Oz Runways because we have the iPads that we hand out to our customers. So each aircraft gets an iPad. I'll explain that a bit later. But this is the routing for the upcoming safaris. So down the east coast, we have the option of going along coastal through Nara because it's actually a Saturday, the day 1 that we leave, and Nara would allow us through the airspace through the VFR route. So that would be something worth experiencing. Otherwise, we have the option of continuing the inland route just past Mittagong and then heading down south. Later on, we'd be heading west past the Great Lakes, so we'd be stopping that first night just on the southeastern tip. And alright, so the first day is flying, not too strenuous, just to get everybody back in the swing of things, stopping in Maringa. And then carrying on to Barren Heads. So heading west, past the Great Lakes, East Sail. The next few days you'll be passing just around Phillip Island, Port Phillip Bay, passing the Great Ocean Road, which we'll be landing at, and then also stopping for a tour of the 12 Apostles for the night. The next day we carry on. You have the option of doing a sort of a scenic around just north of the route, covering the Grampians, the Young Husband Peninsula. I wish I had a bigger map of that right now, but I can show you on it. And off to Kangaroo Island, which we'd be spending 2 nights in because our crowd or previous group that has been there said they would have loved to spend an extra day, so we've added an extra day. There's a lot to do in Kangaroo. It's quite special actually, landing on the island, Kingscote. It'll either be there or, depending on the other bed and breakfast, we could have the option of landing at a grass runway directly at the accommodation. So, on Kangaroo Island, we then have pre-hired some vehicles for your own personal sighting, so you're able to drive around the island yourselves. And then on the 3rd day, we depart there heading to the Mount Lofty Ranges and the Murray River. There we've got a sort of secret wine farm that we've arranged the accommodation for the night. Quite a pretty spot. And on Willandra Lakes, we'll be picking up tomorrow, meeting the flying club, and then back by the Great Torrent Bridge and some Highlands. Okay, so we try and mix it up a bit, so we don't just do if you have a lot of time, you can do a whole lot more, obviously. The idea is not to have it be one long flying exercise. Yes, you can get to the outback and back in 2 days, but it's not really a holiday. So we try and mix it up to give everyone a bit of scenic, a bit of coastal, a bit of countryside, mountains, and a bit of the outback experience as well. We try and vary the airports so that every one of them has a few challenges, but nothing overly challenging. We've got to look at flying ability, and the group will vary. Some people will be pretty current, others would have to have a few days before they're back into the swing of things. So yeah, from the strips point of view, there's a bit of grass, a bit of tar, and some dirt strips as well, just to mix it up a bit. We fly along the Great Ocean Road, and like I mentioned, there's a guided tour which would only be for our group, so it's an individual tour of the 12 Apostles, and the exploring of the Kangaroo Island at your own leisure once you've got there with your own vehicles. We have spoken to quite a few of the aero clubs along the way that will be meeting the group, and they're quite excited to be introducing themselves, and some of them have upgraded clubhouses, etc. So the whole point is to also make new friends out and about that you can go and visit at your own pleasure at some stage. And the Aviation Museum, it's that Saturday. They won't actually have an air show on, but we are still pushing them to organise something just for our group, so we will keep you posted on that one. So what we do as Sky Australia, that is meant to make the whole tour easier for you. We're trying to take the hard work out of it, the tedious stuff that if you had to organise it for a group for yourself. So we try and pick, like I said, interesting destinations. There's something for everyone. The crowd that we get is usually, I would say, 50 plus, 30 plus. It doesn't really matter. The things that we try and do of interest, some of it will be cultural, some of it will be landscape based, some of it will just be pure flying experience with just a little bit of a change from a flying point of view. Right. So we also look along the route that we planned, whether we have suitable alternates for our destinations also along the way, so that's something we keep in mind. Weather is always a factor for us. So on the day we like to be able to be flexible if we need to change the routing inland out, over any terrain, etc. We plan, like at this stage we plan for the outer. We use different aircraft as well. Some of them will have longer range, so we are able to plan the route differently. So we base it on the aircraft we're taking, as well as where we'd be able to get avgas, depending on the range of the aircraft again. Terrain that we're crossing, we try not to plan over Indian territory. If we can, we go either coastal or around. It is your choice whether you want to alter the routes. We try and keep the time to a certain amount so that everyone meets up at the same airport around about the same time. Just makes the transfers a bit earlier. If you wanted to do a bit more sightseeing, you just get going a bit earlier and catch up with the group when everyone else lands. So the point is to actually have a bit of fun in the air as well. Enjoy the scenery along the way. You don't have to stick to our guidelines as far as the routing goes. If there's something you know of that you want to see, you're welcome to amend the track as per your preference on the day. Some sectors will obviously be fuel limiting, so we have to be a bit more direct on those routes. And also weather patterns. If we've got weather coming in the afternoon, we want everyone there at a certain time. We track these days as you guys go. We're always a day or two ahead of you as far as accommodation transfers. We monitor everybody on Rossipos runways. We'll know when everyone's landed. We organise the transfers based on that. We usually nominate one person in the group to be our liaison, so that person would then phone us if there's any issues or anything that we need to deal with, and there's always one of us on hand for that time. Accommodation as well, we tend to stick with the best we can find, so 3 to 4 star. It's got to be comfortable. We're not trying to rough it. It's not meant to be a camping exercise. Once you get there, it needs to be a holiday again. A lot of times we have pilots that just want to keep flying, but we also have their wives or their husbands along that want to have a bit of a holiday in those 2 weeks or 1 week. So it's got to be a mix for both. Alright, what do we give you along as part of the information pack? So we prepare every sector for you as per tour day. We take the salient points out of the URSAs, etc., just to put it all in one place. There's nothing stopping you from doing your own planning, your own research, and of course as the PIC you would be well versed with these things anyway. But it's just to simplify the information. You get it per day from the airport you're leaving to the airport you're arriving in, and anything you need to know in between, summarised for you. Refueling options, etc. as well. Same thing for the hotel accommodation and transfers, you'll be getting that per day. So you know exactly where you'll be booked into, etc. and who's picking you up. And then the Oz Runways portion of it, the route will be pre-planned, pushed to each device. If we decide to do a diversion on the next day based on weather or any other routing or any changes, we're able to push that straight to all the devices. You can upload that, and it's pretty much just a matter of receiving the email and opening it up in Oz Runways. Continuing from there, so from that as well, it's quite simple. So from the pilot side of things, we'd obviously require you to have a current pilot license, medical, and it's always a good idea to have a bit of recent flying experience. You don't want to be going further afield without being well practicing crosswind landings, etc. So maybe just a week or two before doing a few circuits or getting your hand back into it. If you haven't flown for a while, it's always a good recommendation. Knowing the aircraft that you'll be flying, you'll get to know it a lot better if you haven't flown it for a while by doing these tours, but it's always good to have a look at the BA education on board. It'll also get you back into doing things right for the aircraft that you're flying. SFC will obviously, everyone being members would then be authorised to fly these aircraft. And definitely have some fun on our trip. That's really what we're after, is to not just have it be a flying exercise, but a bit of a jolly occasion. Okay, so what we include is the aircraft hire together with SFC, 20 hours in the Archer, the landing fees, 8 nights of shared accommodation, 3 or 4 star, the transfers, the guided tours at the 12 Apostles, and vehicle hire in Kangaroo Island. The farm stays included, the devices of the iPads plus the out-of-bus runways and 3G cards will be included for the entire duration, as well as WAC charts. Some of you may or may not have charts for that far afield, but you will have those provided before the tour. And the detailed flying photos, which I just described, and daily support from our side. Someone always checking as to what the next step ahead is. Alright, so the members tour, which is the 9 days, Saturday to Sunday. The idea being that it's 5 weekdays that you would have to take off, otherwise weekend to weekend, $4.50 per person. And I'll just put a quick blurb on the conditions. So for those interested in booking, obviously we'd be able to send you the full terms and conditions. These are just a few salient points that we just want to make aware of. So being flying, it's a dynamic thing that we will partake in. Obviously there might be weather. We do our best to try and be flexible in the way we book our accommodation. Some providers give us that flexibility, others are pretty fully booked early on, so in some cases we will be locked into that type of accommodation. If we have to make other arrangements, we will definitely be doing that as best we can to try and limit any extra costs for all the pilots. Okay, so just to summarise, we're actually going to use the pilot license to do something fun. Discover more of our own backyard, going a little bit further afield than just New South Wales. Our safaris go all the way to Queensland, and we're actually planning some of them in Western Australia in the coming year. So for the European continent. We're sort of using them as the dummies so get the finished product. Alright, so the plan is to make it easy for you, to do all the planning for you, so that when you arrive, it's easier to get the group going. Our plan is also to organise maybe a week before, just to get everyone together to do a proper route briefing, go through every portion of the route, make sure everyone knows how to use those runways, those of you that may not have used it before, and those will be mounted to the aircraft for the duration of the tour. So, if you'd like, I'm happy to open the floor to some questions. I have actually been filling in for my partner in crime, Paul, at the moment, who's been called away on a flight, so go easy on me. This was his planned tour, but I'll try my best to try and answer any questions you guys might have regarding.
What other tours have you had in the last 12 months around Australia?
So we had 2 groups go up to as far, well, they did the southern portion of this tour and went all the way up to Ayers Rock and then came back through Mudgee.
Okay.
Did a little bit of the outback, they did Cooper Pedy, Flinders Ranges, so we got them to, they did 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks, and it was fairly comfortable. Obviously some of them will always want more days in some spots and others want more flying. It's always a bit of a weighing up what's more important for who. But we like to get the feedback after every tour and try and gauge what people's interests are. And even before the tour, we try and adapt and tailor-make them as to the pilots. Most of them would book 6 months in advance. It gives us enough time to actually tailor-make them to their requests.
And in the next 12 months, what tours have you got penned on the board, subject to numbers?
Right. So we're splitting up the tour that we've done going on, which is actually called Flight to the Kookaburra. So the Southern Skies tour will still be available, and then the Outback tour, which is pretty much out to Ayers Rock and back through the Outback as well. That would be about a week's tour. And then we're planning up in Queensland up to the north. It's probably about a 3-week tour.
Right.
So, and as we go, a lot of people are asking for New South Wales, Victoria. It's always a time-limited thing, especially for European visitors. They need about 3 or 4 days just to acclimatise, and then they can only take 4 weeks all up, so it limits them as to where they can go and how long. And seasons, that's the other thing we were aware of. So our summer up in Queensland, usually March to April are the good months around here, and then the winter months from the start, if we can get out of here. That's always the tricky bit. How many of you have instrument ratings? Are you all PPLs? CPLs? PPLs? Yeah.
So just on that, what do you do if you're away and you've got a mixture of IFR and VFR in the flyers?
Our safaris are based on VFR. So we plan everything to the VFR PPL pilot. We do it in Africa, we do it here. We don't really want to have anyone with lesser abilities being forced in a group scenario to be going when you might have 1 or 2 IF pilots that'll say, yeah, well, I can go. We'd rather change the plan because there usually is 1 or 2 other options we have. So we haven't really had major issues with weather other than maybe having to stay an extra night somewhere and having to catch up the flying. So the flying is comfortable. We have 1 or 2 longer legs on this this plan. So we have maybe a 3-hour day, or 3 hours and 2 hours, and a fuel stop in another 2 hours. That's about the maximum we would do. Sometimes you have 1.2, sometimes you have just 0.7 of an hour flying, just to get the maximum of the day of wherever you're spending. So if that's the case and you're stuck somewhere with weather, it's easy to catch up to the next point by doing 2 days of flying in one. So we build in a little bit of fat when it comes to weather-related delays.
Did you say the maximum is 3 and 2? 3 hours
2 and
refuel
2 or
and 2?
a 3-hour day. Yeah.
Sorry, 2 and 2?
So 2 refuel and another 2. So
Alright.
make it about 4 hours there,
Right.
or 3 in one
In one
go.
go,
That's
yeah.
only if there's no other airports to stop and stretch your legs. And it can become a long.
So how many international people are booked on this one here?
This is purely for SFC members.
It's purely SFC.
Yeah, we've got an international group now in August, and then we've got this one for September.
We've got a couple. Is there any contingency plan for aircraft unserviceabilities around the track?
Yeah, that's why we've teamed up with SFC, because we'd like to have a little bit of redundancy. In fact, Joseph, do you want to?
Yeah, we've got there's a group up in the Northern Territory, and they actually fly, so they provide service around North Australia. They fly to you with parts. So if there is no one accessible at the aerodromes where we're landing at, and it's remote. We had on our last tour, the international tour, one of the groups got stuck up in the Northern Territory, one of the wild parks up there, and he managed to fly out there within a day, sort them out, bring the parts, fix it on site, and get them going.
So with this one that's bottom of the Victoria, you're saying they're flying from Northern Territory down to bottom of Victoria?
That's one of them, but there's also other guys out there in Victoria that do the same type of service. So we're going to try and tap into all the different services that we need. Hopefully we go with, without any maintenance requirements, but there's always going to be an issue.
But say, for argument's sake, okay, that's covered that bit, but do we stay as a group, or the US aircraft get left behind and everybody proceeds?
It's varied. So in my experience, what we've used to do, if it's a large aircraft that you've got with you in the group, it might take some of the people with and carry on. If you don't have that capability, you have aircraft performance issues, you would then stay the extra night, the group can continue. We really judge it on the day who the group might be, how close. Some of them arrive knowing each other and want to stick together. For others, it might be simple if two would stay with the aircraft, etc. But it's really what we like to provide is to try and make it so that when you land and you have unserviceability, you just go to the accommodation, we try and take care of the rest. So that when you come back to the aircraft, it should be serviceable. We definitely try our best there. If it takes an extra day to get a part, that's just aviation.
The other question I had was regarding the cost. That's for hiring club aircraft. What about those of us who want to bring our own aircraft?
So at this stage we have accommodation booked tentatively for 10 people, so 5 aircraft. We'd like to give SFC members and the aircraft first priority, and if there's spots available, definitely we do.
Well, I am a member, but I also own my own aircraft.
Yeah,
That's something we just got to look into, the pricing structure for guys like yourselves. But it's designed to get also the club aircraft flying as well. But of course, you've been members for so many years.
Yeah.
I think we're going to limit it to two aircraft. Is that correct on that flyover? For
With
non-owned,
two non-
so owned,
yeah.
owned.
So 5 aircraft all up with 10 people is what we can accommodate on this one.
So those that own their own aircraft are after the 10 people, is that it?
No, after the 6.
After the
6 and
6.
4.
So it'd be 3 aircraft of club and then 2 of non-club. Should it be that for our members? See, when we go international, there's no dramas for us because they're always our aircraft, so it works well. There's a cost associated with it. When we priced it from our end, we've done it keeping members in mind because we want it as cheap as possible for you guys to get out there and go flying. That's the whole idea about this. It's not about the club making money. The club makes the money from its business side, which is the flight training. The club membership side is all about just covering the costs and make sure that you guys get out there and enjoy yourselves. That's what's been taken into consideration.
And we'll of course listen to the feedback as well. If you guys want shorter trips or weekend trips, we're happy to oblige and organise with the club aircraft.
So we haven't yet priced Cole for yourself, price using your aircraft. It's something we need to now go back and look at and see what the pricing comes in.
Just give us your email address and we can have a look at it and answer any questions you want.
Yeah, definitely accommodate for it.
Yeah.
If you consider swapping out the 2 days at Kangaroo Island with 2 days in the Barossa, or do you think the excess baggage is a bit too much?
It's the excess baggage in the after. If you're home in Cherokee 6, I'd say yes. Oh, by all means. I mean, if you just want to do a wine tour and we have 3 days in every port, that's something we can talk about. Have 1 day for recovery.
Your support services are remote in Sydney, so when we're away flying,
Yes.
it's all communications back to the home port.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll be monitoring using Oz runways as well as we have the liaison person is in your group. If there are any issues that come up, we'll just give you a call. We'll check in on you without harassing you. I mean, we don't want to get in the way. The whole idea is for you to be independent out there and just doing it by yourself, but knowing you have the support backing you. And it's either the technical support or the organisation support.
No, there's a bed at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Transport.
Yes.
And fuel.
And a bed, yes.
It's taking the planning out of it. We make sure, and if any place calls us and says we've run out of fuel, we make sure we change the routing and you have a refueling stop that you don't have to worry or fret about. It doesn't take the onus completely away from the piloting line. It's always a good idea to check with us or check with them directly, especially if you start heading outback way. But
And
we get help.
what's the payment terms?
So we'd like to know probably by 2 weeks' time who's going on this tour, and then we usually take a deposit and then a final payment. It's slightly different with you guys. It's usually 30 days before we expect the final payment.
And if there's mass weather like we've been having lately,
The refund side, so any hours that you don't fly obviously won't have to be paid. Any hours that you fly over and above will be at the SFC members rate. And any accommodation that we can get a refund for, we will be reimbursing you as well. If there's an accommodation provider, we have to work within their terms and conditions as well. If they lock in and they say this, you forfeit the first night and you happen to only be there for one night, then yeah, we do lose payments on that. So that is the risk we take. For our overseas travellers, their travel insurance tends to cover that. So maybe something to look into domestically.
So that 4,950 per person that you've given us a guidance at the moment,
Yeah.
are you able to break that up into accommodation and aircraft?
We tend to keep it as a package tour price, just because it's an algorithm and a whole spreadsheet that works it out. If I have to take it out, it's just time consuming. That's why we do it. But we keep our costs of pretty much a fee, a percentage of the accommodation. The SFC aircraft are pretty much at the rate you would normally hire them. And the rest is accommodation. There's, in some cases we've included the meals where you won't be in a local town. So we've tried not to force the group to have to eat at the accommodation by including it, etc. It's only where you may not necessarily be close to a town as such, where you have to be on a specific estate or air park / wine farm, where they would include breakfast, etc. That's where we've included it. Where you happen to be in Kingscote, where you can be looking after your own meals, etc. We've left it as such, just to give you. And I mean, we do work with the accommodation providers. We try and get decent prices on most of those so that you'd have a saving in the end rather than having to book those things yourself. Even if we mark it up with our percentage, it will always come in lower than paying directly with them. Any other questions?
I'm just going to say thank you very much for
Yeah,
coming here this afternoon. Perhaps we should thank you in the usual way.
Yeah, thank you.
So if we've enticed you in any way to come along for the next one or the ones after, for us it's actually a big, huge global group of friends that we tend to call our aviator mates. So